Thank you, Matt. We also have a teacher, Darla Tisden, and a former Arbor cafeteria employee, Carrie Wheeler. I'm not familiar with either one of these, but we'll have a quick moment of silence for these two individuals also, please. Thank you. Is there any amendments to the agenda? Good news items. Anyone have any good news items? Well, Jay, if you aren't going to take any, I will. Canton High School Student Council will be handing out trick or treats to all the grade school kids. That just happens to be Ashley Krulak and is one of the sponsors for the student council. And I got this the other day, WMBD TV Heroes tonight at 10 o'clock. Is that right, Jay?
Yep, tonight at 10 o'clock.
It'll be on TV.
They're going to highlight Canton High School and our remote learning.
Good. Get a toot our own horn for once.
You want to cheat a little bit and give us a previewing peek on what it's going to say? I know you were on TV last night too.
Just highlighting the good things that are not only happening at the high school, but within our district. I know the board's spoken that before. A lot of the sacrifices that teachers have made during this time frame and a lot of the new learning that's taken place within our district. So a lot of good things happening. So with every dark cloud, there is some silver lining.
Thanks, Jay. Anyone else? Recognition of audience request to address the Board of Education.
I have one letter that was sent to me this afternoon via email from Nicole Martyr. I'm just going to read it. I told her I would read it aloud. To the CUSD 66 School Board, my youngest son, who has a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and sensory processing disorder, is a freshman at Canton High School. He has an IEP. My household comprises of all essential workers aside from my son that is still in school. I'm requesting that CUSD 66 reopen the schools to in-person learning. My son and children like him are being severely impacted by the remote learning situation we are currently in, as well as creating an undue hardship on their families. My son requires guidance and redirection, as well as structure, support, and to be able to ask questions as they come up. He needs the socialization that comes with being in the school building. Remote learning is creating an environment of isolation that is taking a serious toll on his mental health and creating unnecessary stress. I'm sure he is not alone. Many families like my own are struggling because we're working full time, and many of us are working overtime or have a second job, and then coming home to make dinner, take care of our homes, and try to be a teacher. Our homes are not equipped with support staff. Many of us have not done some of the things learned in school in 20 years or more. Some of us have never seen some of the things they are learning and have no clue how to help. I urge CUSD 66 to look at surrounding schools comparable to CUSD 66 like Washington, Dunlap, and Morton, who are in-person learning and making it work. Many of these schools are holding activities. Morton and Pekin marching bands are still active. My husband and I work at the prison. We report to work every day. We wear a mask. We clean and disinfect our areas daily. COVID-19 has not prevented us from working. Canton has opened back up for business. Bars, restaurants, gyms, and movie theaters are all open for business. Many places still set up for the scenic drive. The Red Dog held their annual race. Weddings and funerals have resumed. If these places can operate, then there is no reason for the schools in Canton to not be open. Keeping the schools closed are robbing our children of valuable lessons that can only be learned in school. Remote learning is not meeting the needs of our kids, let alone for kids with special needs. Kids like my son who are on the autism spectrum and require the social interaction that only in-person learning can provide. Kids like my son are suffering educationally and mentally. Families like my own are stretched too thin trying to make it all work. I spend more of my workday dealing with the issues arising from remote learning than I do working. By keeping the schools closed, CUSD 66 is not meeting the needs of my son and providing him the education he has a right to receive. I do not doubt that COVID-19 is real. I know it is. I know it can be serious for some people, but we cannot live our lives in fear of COVID-19. There is no justifiable reason to keep our kids out of school when the entire town is out and about doing everything from working to socializing. The staff of CUSD 66 included. If we can all be out shopping, then our kids can be in school learning. Sincerely, Nicole Martin.
Is there anyone else to address the board? Hearing none, we're on to the consent agenda, which will take us through 12C. Is there anything anyone wants to pull from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
It's moved by Ben Bishop. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Mike Krulak. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Ben Bishop,
Yes.
Mike Krulak,
Yes.
Matt Keys,
Yes.
Lori Coleman,
Yes.
Leonard Barnard,
Yes.
Jane Lewis, Tom Snowman.
Yes.
That takes us to 12D. Consider approval of auditor contractual agreement with Mack and Associates. It's enclosed is the agreement. Is there a motion to approve Mack as our auditor? So moved. Been moved by Matt, seconded by someone, please.
Second.
Been seconded by Jane. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Matt Keys,
Yes.
Jane Lewis,
Yes.
Leonard Barnard,
Yes.
Ben Bishop,
Yes.
Tom Snowman,
Yes.
Mike Krulak,
Yes.
Matt Keys,
Yes again.
and Lori Coleman.
Yes.
12E, consider approval of Canton Union School District 66 Risk Management Plan for fiscal year 22. Is there a motion to approve the risk management plan for fiscal year 22?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Mike, seconded by Ben. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Leonard Barnard,
Yes.
Ben Bishop,
Yes.
Lori Coleman,
Yes.
Matt Keys,
Yes.
Mike Krulak,
Yes.
Jane Lewis,
Yes.
Tom Snowman.
Yes.
12F, consider approval of resolution for tentative 2020 tax levy. I've looked through all this, Tad. Is there anything you want to add?
There may be some changes next month. The county still does not have hasn't released the assessments. Taking the basis assumption of approximately a 2% increase in EAV overall. The township is telling me residential EAV, they're expecting within Canton Township to be flat. I did build in a 1% increase in there for a cushion. Total levy of a little over 8.6 million. When those numbers are there without having the county numbers there, I did build in a cushion there so it would cover up to a 3% total increase. So net result, we would have a 3.79 tax rate for $100 of EAV. We'd have a bond abatement of $245,000 again this year, which is what we've done in the last several years. Bond payment would be a little over 35 cents for a total tax rate of 414. We were at 407 this year. That number most likely will end up being high. We'll end up somewhere closer to around 409 if numbers come in where I expect them to. Some concerns that we have: residential EAV will continue to be flat or very close to it. As I mentioned, the county's not released assessment data. Still potentially have the possibility of tax caps on the horizon. That's something to keep watching for. And as we're all well aware, the impact of Duck Creek will hit us eventually. So, any questions?
I know farm ground's still going up though, isn't it?
Yeah, expecting probably somewhere around 10% again this year.
It's not, farm ground's not flat.
Like the silent.
No.
Wait, what is it? Not too loud, is it, Gene?
Yeah. Anything else to add?
No,
Okay. The motion to approve the resolution of tentative 2020 tax levy. Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Jane. Second, please.
Second.
Second by Ben. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Leonard Barnard,
Yes.
Ben Bishop,
Yes.
Lori Coleman,
Yes.
Matt Keys,
Yes.
Mike Krulak,
Yes.
Jane Lewis,
Yes.
Tom Snowman.
Yes.
Twelve G, consider approval of reopening of school plan for Canton School District 66. I'm gonna turn this over to Ralph, and I think Charlie's gonna speak first.
Can you advance the slide, Julie? For today's presentation, the following objectives that we hope to accomplish. Parent survey is going to be presented by our Director of Student Learning, Julie Tarbin. Jason Parsons will review the trigger metric that was developed by the district. Safety schedule, remote learning aspects, good parts and bad parts of half day versus full day will be presented by each principal and within their own respective buildings. They'll talk about the pros and cons. And then finally, I'll share the recommendation with the board and the community. But before, what I'd like to do is thank the Canton Education Association and all the individuals that were part of developing this plan and fine tuning it. Charlie Blanchard, he's a CEA officer and chief negotiator. He's here with us tonight. He's going to make a statement to start us off. Miranda Clarity, member of the CTA, Lincoln School teacher. Jason Parsons, curriculum director. Stacy Murphy, member of CEA and Canton High School teacher. Minnie Perez, member of CEA and Ingersoll Middle School teacher. Shelley Martin, director of student services. Tad Dorenzi, assistant superintendent. Mary Louise Waskow, she's a CEA member and an employee at Ingersoll Middle School. Julie Tarbin, director of student learning. Candida Howell, CEA member and employee at Canton High School. Jay Valencia, principal of Canton High School. Eleanor Gardner, principal of Westview Elementary. Kylie Lidwell McFerrin, principal of Lincoln Elementary. Chris Piper, principal of Eastview Elementary, and Dr. Margaret Sagerston, Ingersoll Middle School principal. So as you can see, this was a expansive collaborative effort that everybody worked together. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Charlie Blanchard so he can give a statement on behalf of the teachers and the Canton Educational Association. I want to step up here, Charlie, so the microphone can pick you up.
My name is Charlie Blanchard. I am the CEA certified co-vice president and co-chief negotiator. I asked to speak to the board on behalf of CEA, and I thank you for the opportunity to do so. A few weeks ago, I came to the board looking for the missing collaboration pillar that is part of the district's vision. I'm very happy to say that we have managed to recover that missing pillar. A CEA committee consisting of various members that they just went through up there on the slide met this week with the superintendent to discuss the student re-entry plan and answer questions that the staff had concerning students coming back into the buildings. By meeting, we were able to mutually address, define, and progress toward a common goal, which serves not only our CEA members, but the community of Canton as a whole. We want to thank the district administration for reaching out to CEA to work collaboratively on a plan to bring students back into the buildings. Together, we have worked on a plan that may not please everyone, but has allowed the educators in the district to have a say in what students returning to school will look like. Although there may need to be some bargaining ahead to ensure everyone is on the same page, we are extremely pleased with the steps we have taken together as a district. We look forward to continuing to prioritize the quality of a Canton education while continuing to consider the safety of all students and staff during these unique times. 2020 has presented education with some unique challenges and opportunities. CEA is looking forward to continuing to work with the administration to address the challenges and embrace the opportunities that lie before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yep. To say that this plan was not a challenge would be a lie. It was a huge challenge. It took a lot of work on behalf of the CEA, administration, the school board, and the community as a whole. To start off, I'd like to just discuss briefly some of the challenges. Probably the biggest challenge we're facing is social distancing. When and if we go back to school, social distancing at 6 feet is not going to be possible every day, every hour within the building. Under IDPH guidelines and ISBE guidelines, what they mention for social distancing is to the greatest extent possible, which we will do and strive as a learning community. Substitute teachers will be a challenge. We are talking with CEA, and what we had talked about was first trying to see if we could secure substitute teachers. And if we cannot secure outside substitute teachers, talk with the CEA of in-housing substitutes. And then if that is unavailable or I'm not able to do, then we would investigate other opportunities. Remote learning. I think this is probably one of the greatest triumphs that this school district has accomplished in this train wreck called COVID. I really am proud of the teaching staff and the administrators and the school board on how hard they've worked to make a real bad situation better. So they've worked very hard. I am happy to report that PP&E is more readily available. For example, we have developed a stockpile of PP&E. Right now, we have over 100 gallons of thyme oil for our foggers to use on buses to clean between runs. We have 600 face shields, 17,000 standard masks, 4,000 child-specific masks. Let me back up. That's actually 10,000 because another 6,000 came in. So we have 10,000 child-specific masks, and we have 5,000 more on order. 216 half-gallon bottles of alcohol hand sanitizer, 900 containers of Oxivert TB wipes, 800 refills for hand sanitizer stations, which are available as soon as we enter the buildings, in every building. Enough bulk RTU Oxivert to make several thousand gallons of solution that can be put in spray bottles and used with a rag to sanitize high-touch areas in all buildings. On order, we have 30 hand sanitizer dispensers, 100 containers of alcohol-based hand sanitizer. We also ordered N95 masks today. We're anticipating 2,000 of those coming in and another pallet of Oxivert refills. some of the conversations that we had with the CEA, and we totally agree with them, is installing touchless flush valves in the bathrooms, in any bathrooms that do not have automatic towel dispensers or soap dispensers, installing those as well. We've also replaced all drinking fountains in our buildings with touchless bottle fillers. So drinking fountains, when and if we go back to school, will be turned off. Another challenge was lunch periods. The principals have worked very hard and have purchased additional equipment to make social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Probably one of the areas where this will be possible or may be possible is in the lunch areas, but not in all buildings. Another huge challenge was staffing our buildings and childcare for our teachers. In solving this problem, CEA was very helpful on their suggestions that they provided us to rectify our problem with teachers who needed childcare. Next slide, please. The plan itself is 2 components, and the plan will be posted on our website tomorrow. I would encourage all community and staff members to review it. It's a large document, and there's 2 components to it. The first one is the district plan, which is more global in nature. It is very similar to a reference document, and it has interventions and strategies that we will be implementing if we go back to school, and all of them are in alignment with CDC and IDPH requirements and ISBE mandates with running the schools. It's more of an operational on how to run the schools on a day-to-day basis in a safe manner, so we provide a safe and healthy environment for our students. The second component to the plan are the building level plans. Those plans are more detailed, and it discusses within those plans of the operational procedures for those individual buildings. There are 2 components to it because each building has its own unique and singular needs to operate them. So when you look in the plan under an Appendix A, you will see that each building has a sheet within it, and it discusses on a day-to-day basis what those buildings will look like when people walk in them and when people leave. The principals will be discussing those plans in just a minute. Julie Tarbin, our Director of Student Learning, is going to discuss this slide. This slide deals with the amount of community members or parents that have requested remote learning for their children. Julie?
Yep. So what you are seeing on the screen is an overview of the data that was collected on the survey that was distributed on October 6th. The purpose of the survey was to capture the percentage of families that would choose to remain in remote learning format should we ever go back to in-person learning. This first slide depicts the percentages of elementary students, starting with Eastview, Lincoln, and Westview. The last column shows the average of all of the students in each grade level. You can see that there was a total of 173 elementary students district-wide opting for a remote learning format should we return to in-person learning, and that calculates to be about 20% of the elementary student population. The next slide is the same exact thing except for the middle school and the high school. For the middle school, there were 137 students that would be remaining in the remote learning format. Again, around 20% of the student population. And for Canton High School, it was 178 students and 26% of the total student population. Does anybody have any questions about that data? Okay, I'm going to move it on then to Jason, who's going to be talking about the metric.
Good evening. In order to resume in-person learning, we need to have some kind of metric to trigger that. When school districts were developing a lot of their reopening plans this summer, there was only just a few data points that were presented, such as positivity rate and new cases. At the end of August, early September, IDPH did put out metrics for counties to follow in the Restore Illinois, and when the governor made the regions, they put county metrics, and then they also created 4 metrics for schools to utilize to start those discussions on resuming in-person learning. And so the district is going to use a 2-week rolling window of data. The window will begin, plan is adopted in this case. In order to resume their in-person learning, there must be 2 consecutive weeks with each week's score of being a 3 or less. I've provided an example on this other sheet. All these metrics, the 4 metrics, were created by IDPH, and all of the numbers in there were created by them. The only thing that we put in there was a numeric value on their rating. So for each metric, there's a minimal, moderate, or substantial rating. And that minimal, it means minimal risk of transmission, or moderate risk of transmission, or substantial risk of transmission. The 4 metrics that IDPH put out at the end of August, early September, ISB then helped create these different ratings. So the metrics are weekly new case rate for 100,000, weekly count of new cases, weekly count of new youth cases, test positivity. We gave a point value to each rating, 0 for minimal, 1 point for moderate, and 2 points for substantial. And so each week that IDPH confirms all the cases in this data, they put out on Restore Illinois website these different ratings. We would like to propose to use those ratings as our metric, and you add all of those points up for those 4 metrics to create a total score. Julie, if you could scroll down to the next page, you could see an example here. So these are an example data set of 4 weeks. So again, 0 for minimal risk of transmission, 1 point for moderate risk of transmission, and 2 points for substantial. We also looked at neighboring counties and what other school districts were doing as well. So we looked at different reopening plans on what their metrics were, what their weekly, what the rate would be to go back into school. We looked at their rolling windows, the number of weeks. We looked at their counties and looked at those 4 metrics that, okay, they're still in school and they're operating, and there's 2 or 3 of those metrics that are at moderate. So we did some research on what other places were doing. The example is just 4 weeks of data. As you can see, week 1 is a 3. That would be within our threshold. We would be wanting to see another week of a 3 to trigger our in-person learning. But in this case of this example, week 4, there was all moderate transmission ratings. So that would say, all right, that now starts that 2-week rolling window over again. So then if you look at week 3, an example, week 4, things are coming down. That would then trigger us to go back to in-person learning. Now, when that happens, we have to have a timeline. It just can't be that the next day, hey, everybody's coming back. So we do need to have 2 weeks after that metric is met in order to get staffing, transportation, food service, all those preparations, and making sure that our safety protocols are all in place. Once the metric outlined above is met, the district will resume in-person learning by phasing in the different building levels. This was based on the parent survey data on the number of students requesting to be remote and in person, along with Illinois State Board of Education guidance on phasing in at-risk groups of students and consultation with the Fulton County Health Department. I ran this by Katie Lynn the last few days, and things she said look good. After the metric is met, the following timeline events will be followed. The actual school resume dates may be adjusted to account for holidays or breaks. For example, if we, go for a month and the 2 weeks are finally met, we may adjust the actual start date, resume date for those different building levels based on, you have election day now that we have to account for, Thanksgiving, winter break. So just to run through that timeline, the metric is met. District makes an announcement to families and community. Individual schools then begin to communicate with families on the specific details on resuming in-person and assignments of remote learning. Example would be start date times, arrival procedures, some of those safety measures. The schools would then take the lead on sending out communications on those specifics. Administration staff, food service, transportation begin preparing for that in-person. After that metric is met, elementary buildings would resume 2 weeks after that metric is met. And then 2 weeks after that, Ingersoll Middle School would resume. So that's 4 weeks after the metric is met. And then Canton High School would resume in-person learning 6 weeks after that metric is met. That also allows us to adjust and adapt to our safety protocols and what we learn. Mitigation efforts. Once the metric is met and the timeline is, or we're already back, we are in-person learning, we're going to use the following mitigation efforts to help control transmission. Once that metric is met, we will no longer use this metric to be utilized once the district is in person and schools are reopening. We will use the following mitigation efforts that a lot of other schools are using, such as a positive case percentage per building. So over the course of a 7-day rolling window timeline, during our timeline, if 3% of the students and staff in attendance test positive, the school will automatically revert to full remote learning for at least the next 14 calendar days. Also, IDPH and ISB guidance or even a governor executive order could cause us to go into a full remote learning environment. Also, we will use, just like all businesses are in the community and county schools, over the course of this timeline or thereafter, when we're in person learning, the districts will work with the Fulton County Health Department families to follow the contact tracing protocol if there was any confirmed exposures to positive cases. That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions that I may be able to answer? If not, I'll turn that back over and I think we go to elementary. Thank you.
This is Mrs. McFerrin. I'm going to speak on behalf of Mr. Piper, Mrs. Gardner, and myself. We collaborated with our leadership teams and staff in all 3 elementary buildings to create a consistent plan. If you notice on the bottom left-hand corner of this slide, there is a more detailed plan for Eastview, Lincoln, and Westview. Some of the fine details will look different in each building, but overall, the plan is very similar. So I'm going to be sharing that with you this evening. I appreciate this opportunity. When we discuss the overview and safety mitigation procedures for all formats of in-person learning, we took into consideration arrival, restrooms, personal hygiene, sanitation, shared materials, transitions, and departure. For arrival, we're going to ask our families to have the students arrive between 8 and 8:20 a.m. There will be separate entrances for the bus and the car riders. There will be temperature checks of all students before they exit their cars and they exit the bus. There will be breakfast available in all cafeterias, and students that report to school before 8 a.m., those students will report to the gym where we will have social distancing markers available so the students will know where to sit, and that area will also be supervised. For departure, the students will remain in their classrooms and then they'll be dismissed from the classroom as the bus or their transportation arrives to the school. Many of our classrooms have restrooms, so we're going to encourage our students to use the restrooms that are available within the classrooms. But those that do not have restrooms, those students will use the restrooms in the hallway. And we will limit the number of students in the restroom, and we will place social distancing markers outside of the restroom for those students that need to wait. As Mr. Siebertson spoke earlier, the water fountains will be turned off, but we all do have water bottle filling stations within the buildings. Also, we will provide water bottles for those students that don't have any readily available. Staff will provide guided lessons on how to properly sanitize our hands for our students using hand sanitizer and washing our hands. The transitions in each building, it's going to look a little bit different because of the way the buildings are laid out, but there will be traffic flow patterns that the students will be taught. We have all purchased floor stickers and tape to provide visual reminders for our students. And as I've already spoke of, we will provide dots on the floor for those areas where students might need to stand in the hallway and wait. We have personal hygiene sanitation stations located at every entryway in the building. And also as you travel throughout the building, there's hand sanitizer dispensers on the wall. And there's also readily available in the classrooms. Shared materials will be limited as much as possible. However, if they are a necessity to differentiate instruction, those will be provided, but they will be sanitized after each use and in between students. Does anybody have any questions at this point in time? Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead. What does it look like for a half day of school at the elementary level? For safety, all of the safety protocols that I just mentioned apply. Lunch will be distributed as a bag lunch, so students will not be served lunch at school, but they'll get a bag lunch to take home if they request one. Car riders will take the lunch upon dismissal, and bus riders will take a lunch as they exit the bus. So there'll be coolers available on the bus to hold the lunches until the students leave. That way, they're not tempted by having their lunch with them in their seat. As I mentioned, students will report between 8 and 8:20. We all know that the reality is some of our students might arrive a little bit earlier, and that's why we'll have the gymnasium set up for those students that do arrive early that don't eat breakfast. Departure would take place at 12 o'clock. The core academics will take place in the morning while the students are at school. So they will get their math, their reading, or ELA. They'll get their success or tier time, science, social studies. All of those instructional minutes will be fulfilled in the morning within the classroom. And then the afternoon, we would continue with the virtual setting for our special classes, which would include music, art, PE, library. We would also offer small group instruction, which we're currently doing, and that would include enrichment and interventions. Ms. Gardner is going to speak in regards to early childhood and little learner schedule, because that is specific to Westview.
Thank you. So in the scenario of a partial school day, early childhood and little learners, their schedule they would also need an alternate schedule. Currently, approximately 100 students total are enrolled in both of these programs. In a typical school year, these students attend half a day in either the morning or the afternoon. So I've been working with our early childhood and little learner teachers, as well as our state preschool for all coach, to ensure that we develop a schedule that meets the needs of the students, but also meets the requirements of the Preschool for All grant. Currently, we're considering a schedule that would offer a daily shortened time for these early childhood and little learners. We've also discussed staggering arrival and dismissal times from the rest of the students, as well as using an alternate entrance. Both of those things, the staggered arrival and dismissal times and the alternate entrance, would alleviate some of the traffic congestion in the front parking lot of the building, as well as having less students waiting to have their temperatures taken when they arrive. Again, the schedule for these students is still being finalized in collaboration with our teachers and the Preschool for All coach, but we wanted the board to be aware that there will be some unique needs for these younger learners.
Okay. For our students that have opted for the remote learning option, these students would remain with the current classroom teacher. They would just join the classes synchronously. So this means that during the school day when we have in-person learners, those students that have chosen to be remote would be logged onto their computer, and the classroom teacher would be videotaped so they can actually interact with the classroom teacher and their classmates. It would just be from home. Remote students would have opportunity to access staff during established office hours in the afternoon. And so sometimes in the afternoon, if those students needed extra help and they didn't have the opportunity to chime in during that synchronous learning, they could set up a meeting with their classroom teacher. Here are the elementary's list of pros and cons for a half-day schedule. This was compiled by administration and staff. For the pros, we feel as though families are given the opportunity to choose which format, remote or in person, whichever works best for their families and individual circumstances. The elimination of lunch alleviates exposure of students being in an area trying to social distance as well as occupancy concern. This allows for less changes of current schedule for students and families, and students would remain with the same classroom teacher that they currently have. This would also allow for less exposure for staff with specials. Our special area teachers, quite a few of them travel between buildings, so this would alleviate their exposure to students across buildings. Some of the cons for the elementary half-day schedule include, for students not being in school full day has negatively impacted their social and emotional well-being. Shared staff across district creates scheduling conflicts, which we have, Chris, Eleanor, and myself, we've discussed this and we have managed to create a schedule that works with shared staff. Students would have to take computers home every day, less instructional time for students in each subject area, childcare scheduling for community members and staff, authentic and meaningful engagement for remote students, difficulty fostering relationships with peers and teachers, and challenges with meeting the needs of remote and in-person schedules. And now, for what does a full day look like if we go back to in-person learning? Safety. Students will eat in the cafeteria and gymnasium. Spaces will be set up for social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Tables and seats sanitized between grades. Specials, music and art conducted in general education classroom. This basically means that our music teacher and our art teachers would be traveling to the classrooms rather than our students traveling to the art or music room. Library time will take place in the library and PE will be in the gym. It will be socially distanced and there will be no physical contact or sharing of equipment. The schedule, the arrival and departure times are consistent with the traditional schedule, and the one change that we did discuss would PE would have to be shortened up to 10 minutes to allow for the gymnasium to be used for lunchtime. For the remote learners, remote students would be assigned remote teachers across the district. Students could possibly be reassigned from their original classroom teacher. And now for the pros and cons that we developed. The pros would be having students in the building all day, every day is better for their social and emotional well-being. They would be returning to the traditional schedule for all academic content. Students are receiving education from trained professionals all day, whether they are in person or remote. They would receive specials instruction in person rather than virtual. This would provide daily consistency in the delivery of core academic content that is specifically tailored to the needs of the remote learners. Provides the opportunity for a highly qualified educator to curate engaging and meaningful learning experiences for the remote learners. It builds a sense of classroom community for students and an opportunity to build relationships with new peers across the district. It alleviates scheduling obstacles for families and community members. Now for the cons. Lunch makes it difficult to implement social distancing. Students will be socially distanced somewhere between 3 and 6 feet and will have their masks off while eating. There will be increased exposure for traveling staff. Remote students will only receive core academic content. Students would have to establish new relationships with peers and teachers because of the possibility of changing classroom teachers. And reassigning of some students based on designated remote teachers in an effort to balance out classes. Could be a con. Does anybody have any questions for any of the elementary principals? We're all present.
Yeah, I think I missed the half day, on the half day schedule, what happens with specials? I just missed it.
Okay. For specials on the half-day schedule, those would take place in the afternoon and they would be virtual. So after the students attend their core academics in the morning, they would travel home with their computer or device, and then they would log on with their special area teachers in the afternoon. The schedule would mimic the current schedule. So for example, if my daughter Linnea has art on Tuesdays at 2:30 in the afternoon, she would still continue to have art Tuesday afternoon at 2:30. It would just be virtual.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I appreciate this opportunity. And if you do come up with any more questions, please contact Eleanor, Chris, or myself. Thank you.
Well, good evening. For the IMS safety mitigation, this is Dr. Margaret Segerson, the principal of Ingersoll Middle School. And I want to thank all the teachers that worked so very hard on much of this plan that's going to be presented to you this evening, starting with our school improvement team on down to all of the rest of the staff that had input and came with solutions to many of the different puzzles that we had throughout the process, even as far back as this past summer. As far as the mitigation procedures, they are much like the elementary. The difference is the arrival time would be at 7:50 in the morning at IMS and dropping off between 7:50 and 8:08. Much of the rest of the plan is very similar. The biggest challenge that we are going to have here at the middle school is the 4 lunch periods. The second biggest challenge will be the intermixing of the students from class to class and moving from one class period to the next. We have a proposed schedule to reduce these concerns on the next slide. Thank you. This modified schedule was put together with the teachers, and again, they had some great solutions here. We're proposing a modified schedule that takes into account the total number of students at each grade level for in-person and remote learning. At the 5th grade, we have 149 students with 29 at the time of the writing of this that were committed to remote learning. So there'd be 120 in-person learners. We would look at dividing up the 5th grade learners into 8 groups. So it would be very similar to their current TAP classes to allow students to travel in cohorts to language arts, math, social studies, and science. And those classes would be paired up with a language arts teacher teaching social studies and a math teacher teaching science. So that would lessen the number of classes that they would be rotating to. PE and Encore would meet in the afternoon for the 5th grade. At the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we would divide the classes into 10 groups, allowing for a rotation of language arts, math, social studies, science, and a PE or Encore class in person. By doing that, we reduce the numbers in the classes significantly because we do have some classes that are nearing 30. Students would rotate through the 5 classes and be dismissed starting at 12:08. You can see that we would release the car riders out the west side and the bike riders and the walkers out the front, and the bus riders would be called via the intercom from their classrooms. In the afternoon, starting at about 12:30, the teachers would have their lunch, followed by time for planning, collaboration, giant time, which is the RTI piece. And then the students that are remote learners, they would be much like the elementary students where they're invited into those classes in the early part of the day, the ELA, social studies, science, and math. And then for those times where they have other questions where maybe they weren't able to participate via the chat section of the Google Classroom, there would be office hours from 2:30 to 3:30 to expand that knowledge. The next slide shows the pros and the cons. One of the biggest pros of this is allowing for the easy transition of remote learners, absent students, quarantine students, or even a building quarantine to move in both directions. At the time of the writing, we were assuming 10% of remote learners, and we've got quite a bit more than that. But with 10% of remote learners, the largest class size was 17. The pro, again, is the grab and go lunch, so that eliminates the 4 lunch periods. Also mitigates the possibility of overflow of the students. We would have the cafeteria, the all-purpose room, as well as the stage. And there would be a couple classes that might be too large where we would have to be using either classrooms or the north hallway. It allows for students to receive most of their instruction in person, as well as the remote learners to engage synchronously with the teachers in the afternoon, as well as during the morning time. Allows for music and band to take place in person by rotating the students through a schedule. Allows for the remote learners to keep the majority of the same teachers. And finally, allows for the students to travel in cohort groups. The cons of this program, schedule is reworking the students into those cohort groups, aligning those cohort groups to Skyward. That's going to be a time-consuming process. The amount of time before the bus gets home for the students to eat lunch, as well as the students would have to engage in remote learning in the afternoon. And students would not stay in the same classes as they were in the beginning of the year, or they currently are right now. Moving on to the next slide. This is an overview of the full day schedule. And you can see that we extended the passing times. With extending the passing times, we reduced the class time. And you will note that the 4 different lunch periods have little to no time in between the lunches. The next slide. The pros is it is a traditional schedule, and the students are able to see their teachers every day and all day, and the positive impact of in-person learning on both academics and social and emotional learning. The cons, the lunch periods will use cafeteria, stage, all-purpose room, the north hallway floor, or classrooms, impacting other content areas for instruction. The passing periods will be increased, the class periods reduced. The full music and band classes are not possible in the size of the rooms. No time for the current teachers to address the needs of the remote learners. We would have to pull the remote learners out of the current classrooms and redo the schedule. The building master schedule will need to be reworked to accommodate remote learners and remote teachers. And students who are absent due to illness or symptoms will need to work asynchronously to stay connected with their learning. And then it's also the highest safety due to passing times, class size, lunches, and the length of the school day. Any questions for Ingersoll?
Yeah, this is Matt Keys. Quick question on the remote learning in the full day schedule.
Yes.
Is there a reason the students that are remote can't just be synchronous with the teachers?
It's very difficult in the full day schedule to be synchronous with the teachers. And then there wouldn't be any time during the full day schedule that the students could interact. It's difficult to teach and keep an eye on the Google Meet in the chat box and with the learners that you have in front of you at the same time.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that one, to be honest with you, because if you're a family that chooses remote, obviously you think that's an option that works for you. Part of that commitment that you've gotten from a remote perspective is that your student is engaged in the process, right? It just wasn't picked to pick it. So I personally kind of feel like we could do better in terms of they could follow synchronously in the classroom. Now, I get they also don't have extra time then in that space, but maybe what I don't understand about the details are that we have enough teachers in the middle school that would voluntarily be the remote teacher for the set of students. I mean, you've got 20 or 25% of the population there that wants to still stay remote. Do we have the staff even reasonably thought that we could line it up? That if we're not gonna have them synchronous in the classroom, then they're at least with a staff that's also lined up? Or is that yet to be worked, I guess?
The idea was that the students that were going to be remote, there would be staff members directly assigned that were going to be working with remote learners, that they would not be running the regular traditional schedule that we currently have in place, but rather they would be running a remote schedule with the remote learners.
Yeah, I'll admit I'm struggling because I think with the technology, I don't understand why a student who's remote and they have a question can't somehow raise their hand in the Google Classroom and get their question answered, but clearly I don't understand. That's okay. It's awful quiet in here.
All right, we're ready to rock?
Yeah.
Okay. So the plan for the high school was really based around an all-day environment. This is what it is. And the detailed plan, if you want to click on that link, that goes into more detail. I will start describing what it would be for an all-day environment, but I'll also give some ideas of what it would be for a half day if that were the choice that the board would make. First, entrance and exit. We would only have 2 entry and exit points. It would be the bus ramp in the south lot and the car drop-off south entrance of the east parking lot. The front doors would not be utilized by staff or students. The vestibule would be used as a area for any sick student that would need to go home. Early bird, the arrival time would be about 7:25, that time range, and the teachers would take temperatures at the door for the early bird students. Arrival for every other student would be between 7:55 and 8:10. Once again, in those entrance points. If the buses do arrive early, then there are places in the front foyer, the south foyer, cafeteria, and north gym that they could congregate, obviously less than 50 students. Breakfast would be available for students in the cafeteria, and we would have less than 50 students in the cafeteria. If there would be more than that, they would go to the north gym. We could also utilize the auditorium if there's any sort of overflow. Once again, this is for a full day. Lunch, we would have open campus available for qualifying sophomores through seniors. Students that are on campus would eat in the cafeteria in the north gym, and spaces will be set up for social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Personal hygiene and sanitation. Sanitation stations are at every entrance throughout the building, and students and staff would sanitize when entering and exiting any space, and of course, PPE would be required. As far as transitional periods, we would tape the floors with color coordinated tape to coordinate when the when the time frame would be for that color to then dismiss, so we can try to mitigate to the greatest extent possible the risk of having over 50 people in a hallway. Of course, masks would be required, and we would still have visual reminders of the CDC IDPH guidelines. As far as shared materials, limit as much as possible. And any shared materials we sanitize between the students, and students would sanitize before use. So as the students come into the classroom or before they use it, they would sanitize it, because they're going to be more apt to sanitize it to a greater extent possible if they know they're going to use it right away, rather than they get up and they have to wipe it off. Restrooms, masks would be required. Visual reminder posted by CDC and IDPH guidelines. Limit number of students in the restroom to the greatest extent possible. And once again, like everyone said, we have water fountains that are turned off, but we do have water bottle filling stations that students could bring water bottles for that. So a lot of what I just described was for a full day. The first proposal is a reentry of a half-day schedule, where we would be done at 12:25. This is for in-person learning. And then the synchronous learning for the remote students would take place from 1 to 3:30. We would plan that time out. We would actually, okay, so first period would be between from this time to this time, second period between this time and this time. So we plan that out between the synchronous learning. As far as the remote instruction for the remote learners during the day, it will be live instruction with the teacher, focused on the teacher, live streaming to the student. And that would be live stream, but the interaction would be limited, and times for question and answer would be between 1 and 3:30 for those remote students. A lot of the pros for a half day, students obviously get to see the teachers every day. That's the main thing, that they're here in the building, and we miss seeing our students. It also provides at least some consistency with being in the building. We also have time set aside for remote learners, which is key, because we have 26% of our building that's requested remote. And it would also mitigate transmission with a grab and go lunch. So students could grab and go a lunch and leave the building at 12:25. So there would not be lunch with this half-day schedule. Some cons would be it reduces instructional time with students, so approximately 33 minutes for each period. That would be a con, and there are passing periods. So a con would be that, there's no way to not have a passing period in a high school unless we completely isolate them in one room. So the con would definitely be passing periods for that. Another proposed schedule, this would be for an all-day schedule. It would be a block schedule where we'd have a traditional A day, B day. An A day would consist of early bird, first hour, second hour, and then the lunchtime and a homeroom time, third hour, and then a remote check-in. And while teachers have the remote check-in, it could also be a homeroom time for the students. B day, same concept, just early bird, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, homeroom lunch. So the pros with this would be there's more instructional time with the students. It's a full day. Also some pros, it's fewer passing periods, so it mitigates risk. So there aren't as many passing periods where students can be out and about with possibility of having over 50 students in an area. It also has time set aside for remote learners. It's not ideal. We could still live stream the teachers in their classroom, but it wouldn't be daily where they would have remote check-in with those students. It would just be on A days. Cons, students don't get to see teachers every day. It would be a A day, B day once again, so it would be that block period. Once again, a con would be a passing period too, because that's going to be a con in any sort of a schedule for the high school and middle school for that matter, where there are passing periods. A con also is there's lunch in the building. So there's still risk factors there that students would be eating in the building and congregating and it's still socially distanced to our greatest extent possible, but still congregating in lunchroom areas. And then just another con is it's not a traditional schedule. It's not something we're used to, but trying to adapt to the best of our capabilities for these, use any buzzword you want, unprecedented, terrible, whatever you want to use. it's going through that time frame. I do want to give a shout out to our staff. Since March, they have been incredible. They have adapted. They have worked every step of the way. They have done things in this time. It feels like forever, but it's going to be going on a year. That I'm just astounded by the things that they've done. So I really want to give. I know people are watching, and I really want to give a shout out to them and to every member in the district. I think that's it. Is another slide, Julie? Okay. Are there any questions by anybody?
Yeah, I bet you can't guess this. It's Keys again. So the remote kids in your case would be synchronous each day, but on A days is when they would have time to catch up with any one of the teachers if they needed to, if they had.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
That would be for the block schedule if we had a full day schedule.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Thank
the
you.
half day they would get, it would be daily, where they could check in still.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the administrative recommendation. The administrative recommendation, upon confirmation of meeting the criteria established within the metric, would be recommendation for students in grades P12 who choose to attend in person to return in a half-day format, working towards a full return to school with successful metrics. The reason why is safety mitigation procedures and policies have been established. Positive impact on in-person learning and the social emotional well-being of our students. The positive instructional impact this model will provide to both in-person and remote learners, and the percentage of families requesting in-person learning. I also want to mention that I will be meeting along with representatives from the CEA on a weekly basis to continue to monitor the metrics and also continue to collaborate with the CEA and the teaching staff on any ideas or suggestions to improve the plan as we progress. Any questions from the board?
What will trigger going to full times?
With a continued positive downward metric.
Which is?
Positivity rate based on the county metrics. Persons per 100,000.
Okay, what Jason explained. What difference? I don't see any difference between half day and full day using that metric.
Okay, well, the metric
Because
is,
the metric's there now. What's the difference whether they're half a day or full day?
one is the comfort level of the teaching staff and the exposure to risk of the students coming in on a full day versus a half day. For example, one of the biggest cons is the lunch aspect of it. That's a big problem.
Yep.
And also, quite frankly, is the planning. When we go into this half-day schedule, we're going to constantly be adjusting the plan to provide mitigations, to clean the buildings, and to feel our way through the social distancing with the students.
So this is a way to ease the district into it
Correct.
and make sure we can adhere to all of these things from a
That's-
safety perspective
That's correct.
without having all the hallway passing and the lunchtime and
Right.
everything? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but we need to have.
I think what you're at though is like, is that 3 weeks? Is that 4 weeks? Is it a
Yeah.
quarter? Meaning we're gonna target maybe half day for the rest of the semester and then second semester full or?
Well, okay,
There's some kind of metric.
there's one thing, I gotta say this, and it's not gonna be popular, but I'm gonna say it anyway. So don't shoot the messenger. The responsibility of the success of this plan and going back to school in a full pre-COVID model is dependent on the community itself. The responsibility is not on the school board. It's not on administrators. It's not on the teachers. It's on the community itself. The reason why we are having an increase in COVID infections, and this has been clearly stated by the Illinois Department of Public Health and our local health department, are large social gatherings and not wearing masks. Period. If people don't start following the rules, then every school district in the state of Illinois possibly could end up in remote. I mean, I read in the Chicago Tribune today, where I believe it's in DuPage or Will County, where they're talking about taking one of those whole counties back to remote because of the increases in infections. The most successful mitigation factor to use is what we're all wearing right now, is a mask. So.
It's in existence.
You know, I think we are looking at making a big move here tonight. And I can, and what you just said, if we don't get everybody following this, we're sitting here tonight making, I think our staff, I think our administrators and people have put together the best thing possible for our students in Canton Town. But again, I emphasize the fact, I don't want to see people die from COVID, but if we don't start following the mask and all that, it isn't gonna work. It's not gonna work without that type of performance from everybody in Canton, Illinois, Fulton County, state of Illinois, and the country.
I think also I want to emphasize this, we have to start somewhere. I don't think our staff is comfortable going back full-time, full bore right now. We're kind of still feeling our way through this. But I will say this in all deference and appreciation to the CEA. One of the first things that all the people in this committee asked is, how soon can we get back to full-time? Can we accelerate this process if the metrics look good? So what I'm saying is everybody wants the students back full-time. That is our goal. We will do that as quickly as we possibly can under a safe environment.
Can I ask where we are with the metrics right now?
Well, right now we were at, I believe, a 7.6 positivity rate. And from what I've heard from a preliminary aspect, that rate has gone down or is projected to go down 1% next week.
We are, according to the metrics that are on this website right now.
Yes.
We are a 3, which is we are substantial in terms of number of cases at 204 per 100,000 and moderate for test positivity at 7.6. The other two metrics, new cases 71, youth cases 13, are both minimal. So they'd be a 0 in the scoring that.
So what would our scoring be at, Matt?
Would be a 3.
A total of 3.
Yes.
And that metric is a week old. Everything is 1 week behind.
Right, but when Jason gave.
But that's how the metrics will be coming.
Right, correct.
What was the number of that? I gotta go back.
It'd be a 3, because you'd have 2 for substantial.
Right,
1 for the moderate, and then a 0 for the 2 other minimums.
right, but what's?
That would bring us back.
That
into
would
school.
cause us to
That brings
say,
us back into school.
that would cause us to say week 1 is behind us in the 2 weeks.
It's a 3.
But that's starting,
When we approve.
we have to approve,
When
so
we
that would start
approve.
this week's
Then we
metrics, not
start.
last week's, right?
Right.
That's
Which would be posted next week.
Yeah, so just so we're clear, if we vote and approve, it's this week's metrics that get posted next week, that would be week 1, and then the following would be week 2, and then you would start the roll-in plan at that point. Is that?
That's correct.
Question?
May
I?
Lori's got a question.
Lori's got one there.
I just want to be clear. My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong. So once the metric is met, then we are at least 2 weeks out for the elementary, 4 weeks out for IMS, and 6 weeks out for CHS. And this is looking at a half day, correct?
That is correct.
Thank
Say
you.
that again, it's
Okay, if you
2,
need
4,
the
6?
metric,
Yeah,
we're at
Ah,
2,
okay.
4, and 6. So nothing is going to happen any before 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Once the metric is triggered, then we're looking at 2 weeks between each building going back.
Okay, can I ask another question?
Uh-huh.
If we start that and then we have an uptick, what are we looking at then? Are we looking at going back and staying all remote? Or does it still continue to go down that road?
It still continues to go down, to go back to school, but keep in mind, once the students are in school, it switches to another metric. It's a 3% infection rate of the total school population. Or if the governor pulls this out, or if the health department pulls this out.
Okay.
And what that would trigger, if we had a 3% or higher in the total population, then that would pull the entire building into a remote format for 14 calendar days.
Thank you.
okay, my question or concern is, I think 6 weeks is an awful long time to get the high school back into the learning environment. I don't know how anybody else feels. Why are we doing 6 weeks versus 3, like bringing each
Just
week
1,
back?
1, 1 instead of?
Yeah,
You know, you guys are rewriting this plan. And I don't like that.
I don't think anybody's rewriting anything, we just asked.
Oh, you're rewriting it. I'm just being honest with you.
well, I'm just
What was the
asking,
reasoning?
yeah, why?
Planning, transportation, staffing, some of the issues that we're having with substitute teachers. If we put all these kids in within a very short period of time, you're exacerbating those problems. It doesn't mean you can't come back and review the plan after you get one building in and see how it goes, or me collaborating with the CEA, but it makes me a little nervous if we start changing the game plan mid-game.
We understand that, Rob. But we also just curious where some of this came from and why.
I understand that.
Okay.
And the other issue is, I believe the community will ask those questions.
Yeah, I would agree.
Does the half day cause more hassle for families?
Some, it does. It causes problems. Well, the biggest concern we have for the half days is childcare for families.
Okay.
That is going to be a challenge. And that was mentioned at the first slide of this presentation. And also as well, social distancing. I don't want, the biggest thing that I don't want the community to think is that I'm standing in front of you, giving them a bill of goods. We're not going to mitigate risk 100% with the kids back in school. On the other hand, you're not mitigating risk 100% with them out of school either. And I think that's been clearly demonstrated with.
You do that when you go to Walmart, you're not.
That's true, absolutely. And that's what the remote portion of this plan is for. Those families that don't feel comfortable sending their children to school, that's what the remote plan is for. And I gotta be honest with you, I think the remote plan that we've developed and that the teachers have executed has been a very good plan, very good plan.
Yeah.
I've seen some schools where they're just giving worksheets where our teachers are in there every day, or online. So.
I think we probably, I would like to see us just stay with what's been planned. Let's don't be switching. If we've got a plan, let's see it in place. And I think our staff and people that have worked their backsides off, getting where we are right now.
I think we're all in
and have
agreement
this
there,
plan.
man. I think we're all pretty much in agreement there.
Okay,
We're just
fine.
asking the
I just-
question
But I
that we're gonna hear.
we're gonna hear it anyway. I don't care what decision we make tonight. We're gonna hear about it. There's gonna be people that love it, there's gonna be people that hate it. That's what we get when we serve on this board.
Nothing says you can't come back and revisit the
That's right.
plan if you have to, if and when the metric triggers. I want them in school just as bad as you do, all of them.
I would have to say the biggest heartburn would be those kids eating in the building. I think that's more than risk than we need to take. So I like the fact that if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it half day.
So the current proposal is half day.
Yeah. While working towards a
While working
full day
towards full day.
deployment.
You've heard several of us on the board say we'd like to have some view of when that is. That doesn't necessarily have to be tonight, Leonard, unless
No.
somebody disagrees,
Oh,
right?
no.
And I'm okay with voting with, let's get this clock started and the 2-4-6. I appreciate all the work that's been done in the, it's been going on since summer. I mean, everybody in the community thinks that this showed up, like a week and a half ago. The fact of the matter is, we've done the right thing. We've gotten where we're at. But I wouldn't mind seeing us approve that, but then give you guys the opportunity to maybe accelerate it if you can get middle school and high school in sooner than 4 and 6 weeks out, right? Just myself personally. But that doesn't have to keep us from approving this so we can get the clock started, right?
No, and I think it's important that this plan's adjustable. It's gonna have to be adjustable
Because
because.
the problem is it could go the other way too.
Right.
If things continue like they have for the last 2 weeks in the county, right? So.
Good.
If the pandemic gets worse, we can go back to where we are sitting right now. Isn't that right?
Yeah, but let's hope it doesn't get worse.
Right, I hope not, I hope not.
Well, that's another issue is we get into the flu season, and I don't wanna be a negative Nelly, but everybody needs to get their flu shots too. So, and like I said, the most important part about this plan that's gonna preserve the integrity of it, nobody comes in any of these buildings without a mask, nobody. And if they do come in, we're gonna ask them to leave. So, and that will mitigate the infection, the spread of infection significantly, along with cleaning, and disinfecting, transportation, so.
Tom, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
I have
Okay.
one more question.
Go, Lori.
I get, one of my concerns with the cleaning is how much are you expecting the teachers to take that over? Because it's a lot.
Well, as little as possible. Obviously, we're going to have to divert some of our evening custodians during the daytime. But I will be honest with you, and we did discuss this. Teachers are going to have to assume some of that responsibility themselves. But what we will try to do is eliminate them assuming that responsibility as much as possible.
Is that another big pro from the half day is kind of learning exactly what kind of cleaning ebb and flow we really need here and.
Well, they're gonna need more,
custodial
they're gonna
staff.
need more time to get their rooms clean and prepped for the next day. That's part of the concern for me for trying to go full, is you're just not gonna have enough time.
It'll be a challenge.
The teachers need that time.
And all of them will have a different comfort level, right? There's gonna be a standard, but then.
Right.
Someone will have a different comfort level.
And we're at that point now.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, they're in their rooms now, right? I mean, so.
Anyone else? 12G, consider approval of reentry reopening schools plans for Kenton School District 66. Is there a motion to approve reentry reopening, please?
So moved.
Ben has moved. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by. Any other discussion? Roll call, please, Emily.
Ben Bishop,
Yes.
Mike Krulak,
Yes.
Matt Keys,
Yes.
Lori Coleman,
No.
Leonard Barnard,
Yes.
Jane Lewis,
Yes.
Tom Snowman.
Yes.
Thank you. Reports. Back on tabs. Reports,
Metrics.
district metric report. And, an attachment there. Any questions on the report there?
Nope.
Quarterly activity reports from each of the individual schools. Any questions or concerns there?
Nope.
Okay. I don't see any discussion, information, or future agenda items. Is there a motion to go to closed session? So moved. Been moved by Matt, seconded by Ben. Move into closed session. Roll call, please, Emily.
Matt Keys,
Yep.
Ben Bishop,
Yes.
Lori Coleman,
Yes.
Leonard Barnard,
Yes.
Mike Krulak,
Yes.
Jane Lewis,
Yep.
Tom Snowman.
Yes.
We're going to move into closed session.
I was gonna tell, the first,
So motion to adjourn. Moved to second, any other discussion, roll call please.
Leonard Barnard,
Yes.
Ben Bishop,
Yeah.
Lori Coleman,
Yes.
Matt Keys,
Yes.
Mike Krulak,
Yes.
Jane Lewis,
Yes,
Tom Snowman.
Yes.
nice to hear you, Emily.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
So
Anybody ever said no to that question?